Raiders and Matthew Stafford. A game-changing move? Big news has just dropped, and it could shake up the NFL. The Las Vegas Raiders are reportedly making a serious push for Matthew Stafford, and this isn't just speculation. There's a real possibility it could happen. Think about it. Where do the Raiders stand right now? They have a solid team, an experienced head coach, and a capable offensive coordinator. But their quarterback situation is still uncertain. If they bring in someone like Stafford, could that be the missing piece to make them true contenders? A similar situation happened with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a few years ago. They were struggling, made some key moves, and boom, they won the Super Bowl. Could the Raiders follow the same path? Now, here's the real scoop. NFL insider Albert Breer reported this morning that Stafford's camp was given permission by the Los Angeles Rams to explore options with other teams. That means Stafford and his reps had 2 weeks to test the market and see which teams were willing to trade for him and offer a big new contract. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Stafford is 37 years old, and reports say he wants a contract worth over $50 million per year. The Rams, who went all in a few years ago to win a Super Bowl, are now dealing with serious salary cap issues. They just can't afford to pay Stafford what he's asking for. So, this raises the big question. Are the Raiders ready to go all in on Stafford? Will they offer what it takes to get him? Or will another team step in and steal the deal? This story is just getting started, and it could change everything. Stay tuned. Who's in the race for Matthew Stafford? It's no surprise that multiple teams are interested in Matthew Stafford. The New York Giants, Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Las Vegas Raiders are all reportedly in the mix. But here's the real question. What will it take for the Rams to actually let him go? Sources say the Raiders are one of about 5 or 6 teams that have already reached out to see what the Rams want in return. NFL insiders, including one from the NFL Network, have reported the same thing. The Raiders are seriously considering making a move. But are they willing to go all in? If the Raiders do make this happen, they're betting big on Stafford to lead them to a Super Bowl within the next 2 to 4 years. They believe he's still got the talent and experience to win at the highest level. But here's something interesting. NFL teams are becoming more cautious when it comes to drafting quarterbacks. Years ago, teams would take risks on rookie QBs, hoping they'd develop into stars. Now, many teams prefer to wait for proven veterans like Stafford, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, or Dak Prescott, instead of gambling on a rookie with potential but no experience. If you're a team picking in the top 10 of the draft and you don't land QB1 or QB2, is it really worth taking a chance on QB3? Many teams say no. Instead, they'd rather build their roster with elite players at other positions, then go after a quarterback when the right one becomes available. And this year, the quarterback class isn't looking great. So, for a team like the Raiders, the safest and smartest move might be to go all in on Stafford. This situation is heating up fast. Will the Raiders pull the trigger, or will another team beat them to it? Stay tuned. This could change everything. The quarterback dilemma. Draft or go all in. Reports are all over the place. Who's really the top quarterback in this draft class? Some say Cam Ward is the only one worth a first-round pick. Others argue that Jackson Dart or Shedeur Sanders could be top 10 selections. But then you hear the complete opposite. Some teams wouldn't even touch these guys in the first 2 rounds. With all this uncertainty, one thing becomes clear. Drafting a quarterback this year is a huge gamble. And if you're the Las Vegas Raiders, do you really take that risk? Unless they somehow land Cam Ward, it doesn't make sense for the Raiders to roll the dice on a rookie. Instead, the smarter move might be to go all in on Matthew Stafford. But here's the catch. Stafford wants $50 million a year. Can the Raiders afford him? Right now, the Raiders have $99.5 million in salary cap space. That sounds like a lot, but things get tricky. They've got 54 players under contract, including practice squad guys and players who likely won't be on the team next season. Plus, 27 pending free agents, 11 of whom are starters, so there are holes to fill. But here's the good news. The Raiders have some key pieces already locked in. Max Crosby is under contract for 2 more seasons, though he wants a raise. Christian Wilkins is locked in for at least 3 to 4 more years. Colton Miller, their anchor on the offensive line, is secured as well. With the right moves, cutting dead weight, making smart signings, and drafting wisely, the Raiders can make a big push. They could strengthen their O-line, bring in key free agents, and seriously compete. A Super Bowl run? The pieces are there. The opportunity is there. The only question is, do the Raiders take the risk and go all in on Stafford? If they do, they're making a bold statement. They're ready to win, and they're ready to win now. This is going to be one of the biggest decisions in franchise history. The stakes: Super Bowl or bust. What will the Raiders do? Building a championship-caliber Raiders offense. If the Raiders decide to bring in Matthew Stafford, they have to do it smartly, without giving up a first or even a second-round pick. Why? Because Stafford isn't returning to the Rams unless they meet his price, which they clearly won't. If they were going to pay him, they would have done it last year when this whole situation first started. So, here's the perfect scenario for the Raiders. Trade for Stafford but keep the 6th overall pick and their 2nd and 3rd round picks. Use that 1st round pick to grab a game-changing wide receiver, maybe Travis Hunter, Tataroa McMillan, or Luther Burden. Pair that elite receiver with Brock Bowers, giving the Raiders a dynamic pass-catching duo. Strengthen the offensive line. Draft a guard in the 2nd or 3rd round and maybe bring in a free agent lineman. Find a powerful running back, someone like Amarian Hampton or Caleb Johnson, to round out the offense. Imagine this offense. Matthew Stafford at quarterback, a new elite wide receiver alongside Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker Brock Bowers, plus Michael Mayer as dominant tight ends, a solid O-line with Colton Miller leading the charge. A young, explosive running back to balance the attack. That's an offense built to win. Defense wins championships too. The Raiders already have Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins locked in on defense. If Tyree Wilson makes a leap in year 3, that defensive front could be dominant. Add in a few key re-signings, maybe Malcolm Kuntze, Trevon Moehrig, and Robert Spillane. And suddenly, this entire team looks like a contender. Can the Raiders afford Stafford's $50 million price tag? This is the biggest question. Stafford wants $50 million per year, and the Raiders have $99 million in cap space. They could structure the deal smartly. Year 1, $25 million cap. Hit. Year 2, $35 million cap. Hit. Year 3, $45 million cap. Hit. Add 2 void years, spreading out the cap here. Hit after Stafford leaves. That way, the Raiders get an elite quarterback without crippling their finances. Are the Raiders ready to go all in? With the right moves, this team could compete for a Super Bowl immediately. But the clock is ticking, and the decision is massive. Do the Raiders take a chance on Stafford and push for a championship? Or do they play it safe and risk mediocrity? This might be their best shot in years. The question is, will they take it? The Raiders' window for a Super Bowl is closing. Will they seize the moment? If the Raiders want to be serious contenders, they must act now. Bringing in Matthew Stafford means taking on some cap hits, but the first 3 years would be manageable. Sure, there will be dead cap in years 4 and 5, but who cares? The goal isn't to build for the next decade. It's to win a championship in the next 3 years. Pete Carroll's time is limited. The Raiders must go all in. Let's be real. Pete Carroll isn't here for the long haul. He's not building a 5-year rebuild. He's here to win now. At best, he's coaching for 3 to 4 years, and then someone else will take over. Whether it's Patrick Graham, Rob Leonard, or even Chip Kelly, a successor is coming. But Carroll's goal is clear. He wants to win a Super Bowl before he's done. And that means drafting a rookie quarterback with the 6th overall pick? Bad idea. Why the Raiders shouldn't draft a QB in the 1st round. If the Raiders waste their top pick on a rookie quarterback, they'll still have major holes at wide receiver, running back, guard. That 6th overall pick is too valuable to gamble on a developmental QB in a weak draft class. Instead, the Raiders should go all in on weapons, draft a star wide receiver, build the O-line, and create an elite offense around Stafford. Veteran quarterback is the only smart move the Raiders need a proven leader. This draft class doesn't offer a guaranteed franchise quarterback outside of maybe one name. Instead of reaching for a rookie, the Raiders should focus on getting Stafford and developing a young QB behind him. Maybe Aiden O'Connell or a third-round pick. Could a trade with the Rams happen? It's looking more and more likely that Los Angeles is ready to move on from Stafford, but the Rams will need a replacement QB. Could the Raiders include Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell in the deal? Sean McVay has a history of getting the most out of his quarterbacks. While neither Minshew nor O'Connell is a Super Bowl-caliber QB, they could hold the fort while McVay finds his next star. The big question: will the Raiders take the risk? All the pieces are there. Stafford is available. The cap space exists. The draft picks can be used wisely. But will the Raiders make the aggressive move or settle for another year of mediocrity? The Super Bowl window is open, but only for a short time. The Raiders must decide. Do they play it safe, or do they go all in for a championship? Time to make a move. The Raiders' Super Bowl strategy. Is it time to go all in? If the Raiders truly want to compete, they must act fast. A Matthew Stafford trade is on the table and the Rams are willing to deal. But there's a twist. Reports suggest Los Angeles is planning to move off Stafford, sit tight for a season, and then draft their next franchise QB in 2025. That means they prefer future picks, not this year's. If the Raiders play it smart, they can send a second-round pick from next year instead of sacrificing this year's valuable draft assets. But the big question remains: is going all in the right move? Defense wins championships, and the Raiders have a secret weapon. Let's look at how the Eagles won their Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Yes, they had an explosive offense, but the real difference-maker? Their defensive line. And guess what? The Raiders' defensive line is just as dominant. Eagles' defensive anchor, Jalen Carter. Raiders' defensive anchor, Max Crosby. The Eagles built their success in the trenches, and the Raiders have a very similar setup. With Christian Wilkins on the inside, the Raiders arguably have an even better interior presence than the Eagles. The key now? Depth. The Raiders' defensive blueprint. Bring back Adam Butler, a critical piece for depth. Retain Malcolm Kuntz. Unless he demands over $13 million, draft a young defensive end at pick 62. The 2024 draft class is loaded with pass-rushing talent, meaning the Raiders can add a cheap, game-changing DE to rotate in. The clock is ticking. Will the Raiders seize their moment? With $99 million in cap space, a dominant defensive front, and a potential path to a veteran quarterback, the Raiders are one or two moves away from becoming real contenders. But will they take the risk and go all in? Or will they play it safe and miss their Super Bowl window? The next few weeks will define the future of the Raiders. If you want daily updates and the latest news about the NFL, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon so you get every new video first.